Welcome to a new episode of All That Jazz. I'm your host, Matias, and I have with me Susanna Stefanachi Macomb. I hope that I pronounced that right. She's an interfaith minister, an author, and a person of many things that we will talk about. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Matthias. I hope I pronounced your name correctly.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good for a second try. I really love it. I noticed you on Facebook, and you're an interfaith minister. So that's really interesting. And I don't know. I think it's a new profession. It's not something that's been around for a long time, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how did this? Let's first start with the. How did this profession start? Even the interfaith thing.
That's an actually wonderful story. So the first Interfaith Seminary, you go to study, was founded by a former Hasidic rabbi from Hungary who lost his wife, his young daughter, very young daughter, his mother and father, 9 of his brothers and sisters in the Holocaust. He came to the United States. Of course, it was very traumatizing for 1 year. Why am I alive? And he got a job in the army, which he always said, could you imagine me doing Reveille? But it was the only job you can get as a chaplain. And then he cut off his curl, the curls.
Hair.
Came what he says, a conservative rabbi. And in his words, because in those days there was no reformed, in the United States and in England, you have in Australia, conservative movement, reformed, more modern, more open. So, and he did that for 40 years. And in his 60s, in his temple, there was a congregant who would take yoga from Swami Satchidananda.
Wow.
And he said, Rabbi, come and meet my Swami. And Rabbi said, what's a Swami? And they became really good friends. And
like the rabbi and Satchidananda.
Yeah, really good. Lifelong friends till their death. Rabbi died first at 97. Satchidananda died not long after. Lifelong friends, doing events at the, so, and they influenced each other. Like Rabbi learned yoga and he would teach Kabbalah to Satchidananda, so lifelong friends. And when they had the first and possibly the first interfaith service in New York, for sure, in the 1960s, Satchidananda represented Hinduism, Rabbi represented Judaism, and there was, Christianity and Islam, and at that time it was revolutionary. So the way it goes, he was recovering from some minor surgery, and he had a vision. He had a vision that Krishna, Buddha, Moses, Jesus, and Muhammad were in a huddle exchanging ideas, and he had on kippah, his yarmulke, and his tallis, and like this, right, listening. And I asked him, I said, did you know what it meant? He said, very soon after, I knew I was going to found an institution where no one would convert you. You could believe or not believe. You could be an atheist. You're welcome. But you must learn about the spiritual and religious traditions of all the world. Rooted in whatever you believe, nobody will change you. But he would say, like the tree of life, your arms, your branches would go out to the world. Mm-hmm. He had a wonderful saying that said, God gave a piece of his wisdom to each of the religions, but if you want all my wisdom, you got to talk to one another. That was a little. He was great with stories. He was also a psychologist, so he was very good with people. So anyway, he founded the first one in the 1970s with the help, actually, of John Mundy, who's now part of All Faith Seminary International, also founded by Rabbi, who's an expert on A Course in Miracles. and a former Methodist minister. So they founded the first interfaith seminary in the 70s. And at first, you could imagine very few people didn't even know what interfaith was. When they were to get licensed, the city hall said, no, you can't marry people. You can't perform these services. They had to go, that rabbi changed that, you know. I was ordained after I graduated in February 1996. So that's coming up on 25 years. Do you know that when I was ordained, people said, what is interfaith? Is that a religion? You know, they didn't even know what it meant. It's hard to believe. So my first chapter in my book, my first chapter, you know, the first surah of the Quran is said to be the door and the essence, to contain the entire essence of the entire Quran. It's also the door. I wanted my first paragraph to be the door and the essence of joining hands and hearts. And it's what is interfaith? Mm-hmm. Philosophy of the heart. And how that, people didn't even know. People would ask me, is that a religion?
Yeah.
You know, and I would explain, my first thing is, interfaith is not a religion. It walks among the religions. It's the bridge. Okay?
Yeah.
So the seminary grew, right? And then there was one that formed in Oxford, England, a branch of it. And then Rabbi formed a second one. And then he also formed rabbinical seminaries for rabbis who would be more open to other religions, stayed rooted in Judaism. So he formed a rabbinical, but now they're all over the place. In the US, there's some in Australia and in England, but there are lots of there's, I can mention one in Florida, one in New Hampshire, one in Pennsylvania, California has a few, you know, but at that time it was revolutionary, if you can imagine.
So you've been for 25 years, you've been interfaith minister. So did you know him and Satchidananda?
Yes, a little bit, not as much as I've had many teachers in my life.
Yes.
I always don't know why I say I seem to get them at the end of their life. You know?
When they're at the peak of wisdom.
Exactly. That's what I say. At the peak of, I don't know, honestly, I meet them when they're very old. and then they die. And then I meet the next teacher. It's just the way it is. I don't know why.
So for a lot of my guests, the spiritual journey starts really young, and it intrigues something in them, and then it develops. And what was it in your life like?
Oh, so I wouldn't say, okay, so my first mystical experience was as a child. My brother, who was 6 years old, died. It was awful. I was sad that I could not say goodbye. I was brushing my teeth in the bathroom. I'll never forget this. And I feel something, a presence behind me, and he's behind me. I see him floating. Kind of like a little bit transparent, but him. Now, as a child, this is like it was yesterday. At first, there's great joy, you know?
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, you know, he's okay. And then fear, you know, like, wait, he's dead, you know? So it sounds strange, but I was 6 years old. I kept pushing. I kept looking to see if he would go away, and he wouldn't go away.
But wait, did you know that he was dead at that point already?
Yeah, yes, he had died.
Oh, wow. Yes. That's crazy.
No. It was mystical. Yeah, it was. But children often have these experiences, actually, I've come to learn. So it's a lot, but finally I decided, you know, I know he loves me. I love him. I didn't know how to deal with it. I was 6 years old. So I looked down, put my head down, kind of ran out. And that was it. And then I had other mystical experience, like when I was an adolescence, I kept seeing this blue eye, this blue world coming towards me every time I closed my eyes.
Yeah.
It fascinated me, and then a little bit frightened me. And finally, I think after years, I pushed it away. And later I just discovered when in meditation, when it happened again, that's the blue pearl in Hinduism. It's the soul. So I had an experience where I almost went off a cliff at 15 years old, and everything stopped.
Wow.
And I left my body, and we crashed into a tree. And afterwards, when they're like, Susanna, are you all right? Are you all right? This happened in Italy, actually, southern Italy. You know, so I was just not there. I was just not there. Finally, you know, are you all right? I came back into my body, and I was calm as can be. The bar was old. I was just like, sto bene, I'm fine, you know? And I wonder sometimes if when people have terrible accidents, do they leave the body before the impact? I don't know. But that was what that experience. So that was really, and then, you know, I got busy with life. I wouldn't say I was extremely spiritual. I went to Catholic schools. So I was very traditional.
The people can tell stories about Catholic schools, right? This is severe discipline. Right.
And in my day, they hit. Okay. Even if you were like, if one person did something bad in the class and we didn't point him out or her out, usually it was a he, unfortunately, we all got hit, the entire class. It was just, you know, it was brutal. It was brutal. Yeah. But there are things I'm very grateful for. I mean, in the words of Einstein, we learned to stand in awe at the mystery of life, you know, to believe in miracles, the miraculous center, you know, there were good things I'm grateful for, but there was a lot that was very cruel. And so when I got into the corporate life, when I got into working life in my early 20s, I was not seeking God. I felt, you know, I had a relationship with the divine, and I certainly was not seeking religion. My experience in Catholic schools made me run away from that.
Right. And you were Catholic, right?
Yeah.
Catholic.
I was seeking peace. Peace in the here and now. I was working 16 hours a day. I said, there's got to be a way in this chaos to find peace in the here and now. So I began meditating, and I'd studied comparative religion and, you know, in college, and I loved it. So I started really going in depth into Buddhism, Hinduism, Eastern, you know, Taoism. And then the mystical, I was very drawn to the mystical teachings in every religion. It's interesting that I really went in depth into Christianity the last. My own tradition was the last one I really went into.
Because it's the least esoteric, and you're like, we'll save it for later.
Well, only because I had issues, you know, with it.
Yeah,
it wasn't.
Yeah.
Now now if you look at, you know, Julian of Norwich, Hildegard of Bingham, Thomas Aquinas, these were mystics. St. Francis I always loved. And interesting that a lot of the mystics in Christianity, you know, the church absolutely condemned and didn't let their writings come out for like 1,000 years.
Right. Because I think it stopped being an organized religion, and then you're trying to preserve a doctrine, and then there's this person that's experiencing God from the inside, and you're like, who is this person, and what is he talking about? Like, and I can understand, like, they're trying to preserve, like, the mystic is a strange one. When you're like, is this person crazy, or is this a genuine spiritual experience? I think
it's interesting you said that, because my next book is My Mystical Life. And it's going to reveal things that I've never revealed to anyone, all my mystical experiences. And there were moments, what you said, that I literally said, I must be losing my mind, right? And then, for example, Muktananda, someone, you know, I would have a meditation session, someone would give me a book, you know, and say, something tells me you should read this book. Right. And in the book would explain that he had the mystical experience that I had.
Right. You know, are you talking about the Kundalini?
My mind.
Are you talking about the Kundalini experience? The Muktananda I think he wrote a lot about it, right?
He did. Well, he wrote a book where he was in samadhi the entire time, in bliss. and someone was just taking, just writing, transcribing what he said. But the mystical experience I already had Kundalini experience. And because I knew something about that, it was amazing. I mean, I was in meditation, I'll never forget this. And all of a sudden, just like you read about this energy, I felt this energy boiling up in the base of my spine, and it unraveled and went through every chakra and all the way at the head. And the only way I could describe is then now I'm sitting up here in the chakra, one with all things. And it was that whole Kundalini experience. But no, the one he described that I never had is this is going to sound crazy to people, never heard. This is why this is going to be in my book, because I've never talked about these things. I stepped into a 5-pointed blue star and soared around the universe. Now, when you think you've gone nuts and you made it up, but I experienced it. It was like being in a spaceship,
Was this like astral? You saw it astral? Was it like physical as well? Were you like...
Well, I saw it, blue star. I stepped into it, and I flew around.
Oh my
and
gosh.
I felt it. You feel like you're soaring. You feel propulsion, and that you could go anywhere just with thought. Anywhere, in any time, you could go to, and he wrote about it. So I was like, I'm not going crazy.
Wow, so this sounds like even better than the drug trips that they're talking about, because this is this universe. This is not some other place. This is this universe. So you could have gone some other galaxy and seen if there's life or something.
Well, when you say that, one time I was teaching someone meditation.
Yeah.
And she made a comment that I love. I have never done LSD.
Yeah.
But she said this. She said, "Oh my God," this is what she said. "This is like LSD without any of the side effects."
Right. Yeah, I think the thing that people don't realize about drugs is that you might it's a shortcut to get this mystical experience, but we always kind of pay the price.
Right.
That's what I've heard.
Steve Jobs, for example, if you read his bio, he really was a proponent that everyone should do LSD. Everyone should drop acid, he would say. And he gave it credit for expanding his mind. And I'm sure in some ways it did. But if you read about his life, he was not an enlightened being in another way, in that he was cruel.
Yeah.
Absolutely cruel and selfish. So, I think if you have the mystical experience, it more transforms you naturally.
Yeah, I think Steve Jobs was like the only person that reminds me of in filmmaking is like James Cameron. He's a tyrant on a movie set, and apparently he's gotten softer as he aged, but still, it is what it is. Like, these people are perfectionists, and they want to. Like going to war. I think making something big like that is almost going to war. But anyway, we're not talking about war here. We're talking about peace. So
So when you have the mystical experiences, so I was not a person I wasn't seeking this to change the world, right? So what happened to me is I started meditating regularly. People noticed. People asked me to teach them. I started, my vacations were spiritual retreats. I would do weeks in silence. But I remember being in one group when I first started, and there was a Protestant minister, a Swami, a rebirther, energy healer, someone, all these spiritual people, and they would talk about their experiences. I was young, I was one with the tree, and the tree was one, and I remember being there. What am I doing here? I like this corporate executive. And yet in that first retreat, I remember, and it's not a pat, because this is why in my book I'm saying that it's like the mystical spirits of a very ordinary person. In this retreat, there were people who had been meditating and, seeking for decades. I was new, And I remember in this one very simple experience, I was the one who had the mystical experience, not them. And people thinking, how could this newcomer who hasn't spent any time have this mystical experience? And I'll tell you why. Because I didn't know anything. I had the beginner's mind. I was like, okay, I was completely open. I'll try it. I'll be present. I didn't have any expectations.
Right. But also you were meditating, you were doing work. Like you said,
yes.
said to me before that you would spend during lunch breaks, you would meditate and stuff like that. And that stuff, I think, accumulates over time.
Yeah. No, definitely. Like people say, oh, I'm not spiritual. I'm like, first of all, everyone is. Everyone has the capacity. Everyone's a mystic, actually. They just haven't directed their energy that way. You know, it's like if you go to the gym, I would say if you have a muscle, very flabby muscle, if you work it out, it's going to get, you know, strong. Same thing with the spiritual muscle.
Your potential, you're potentially a bodybuilder, but not yet.
Now, for some people, it happens, you know, out of the blue, like not, you know, like it seems like they might be, you know, everybody's different. You know, some people, it's a crisis that happens in their life, right? They get cancer, they crash and burn. The mystical experience might come out of that. Or sometimes athletes will talk about going beyond their body. You know, they're so one with, say, running or skiing or swimming that suddenly they're not themselves. They are just the doing of it. That's another type of mystical experience.
Yeah.
I'm an artist. There are times that I have been painting that it felt like a mystical experience. So there are different types of mystical experience. That is for sure. You can't just say it's one kind. And that's what I'm writing in my book, because I've had so many different kinds.
It depends on a lot of things. Like, first of all, I think a person's karma has a lot to do with it. Then the tradition they are in, like you said, the expectations. There's been books written about the Christian mystics, and their experiences have been somewhat different than the Eastern mystics, although different in a sense that what they see maybe is Jesus, but the maybe the Kundalini or the Holy Spirit, let's say, is pretty similar, I would think.
That is what draws me, is that when you read the writings of the mystical experiences of the Christian mystics, the Kabbalists, the Buddhists, the Hindu mystics, though the language might be the same, different, the experience that they will describe of bliss, of being one with all that is, of not being, of being you disappearing, is the same. There's a wonderful saying that, you know, I'm sure you've heard it. The paths to the mountaintop are many, but reach the peak, the view is the same. And that's how I like to think of all the traditions.
Okay, let me ask you this, because there will be a lot of people either in a Muslim faith, the Jewish faith, the Christian faith. My grandmother here in the background.
Hi, Grandma.
So this is the second time it's happened in my podcast, by the way. I was gonna ask.
How do I say hello in your language?
Zdravo.
Zdravo.
Yeah.
Zdravo,
Okay. I was gonna ask something, but now I forget.
So adorable.
Snimam zile. Okay. I was gonna ask some about different will.
By the way, just so you know.
Sorry.
I love that happened.
One time she came past, and then but the guy was talking about cancer, how he overcame cancer. My grandmother just anyway. So some religions will say, like Islam will say, the Muslims they will say this Islam is the only way, and I think in the Bible there's a if I'm not mistaken, where Jesus says, "My mind is the only way through Christ," or something like that. So how do you, as an interfaith minister, how do you reconcile all these different differences that I'm interested in?
That's a good question, and it's interesting because when I first became, I did my first interfaith ceremony. They were international interfaith from the get-go. And I have worked with very conservative people. I've worked with Pashtun Muslims from, Pakistan, marrying, an Episcopal English Christian, Muslim and Jewish, where Palestinian Muslim and Jewish, I work together. Hindu and Muslim, where the grandparents of the Hindu family were killed by Muslims. I could go on and on and on here. Greek Orthodox marrying devout, son of a Holocaust survivor.
Right.
At the beginning, I will tell you that honestly, there were times I would say, God, if you could take this away from me. I don't really, there was so acrimonious between the families.
Yeah.
So one of the reasons I think I can do this, one time a Jewish mother said, you know why you can do this, Susanna? You don't take sides. And I said, I don't see sides. So I have no bias, right? And when someone comes at me, I don't take it with offense or defense. I might have ego in a lot of things. I have no ego in this. I just want to help them build a bridge with love and care. To build that bridge, the foundation must be respect, and love actually builds the bridge. And I offer them options. Sometimes they don't see options. They don't see options. And I point out, like you said, the similarities. Like we focus on the commonalities, but I tell them to rejoice in difference. But sometimes it doesn't, if you are closed, completely closed, it's not going to happen. Now, we're going to have a couple of conversations here. I have worked with very conservative Muslims, and I speak to them in their language. But on the other hand, I'm also an initiated Sufi. So a very conservative Muslim will say Sufism is haram, right?
Yeah.
But Sufism,
it's not really Islam, right?
It's not really Islam. But meanwhile, in my Sufi order, we do zikr. We do Arabic prayers. We call upon the 99 names of God. I could go on and on and on. But the difference is in Sufism, why it's mystical, because La ilaha Allah, there's no God but God. The Sufis interpret it as there's nothing but God. And that's going too far, right? So they think that's Islam. That's not Islam, that's haram. And many Sufis, were killed by Muslims for saying that. What do you mean? Because in the mystical experience, and this is where it gets tricky, right? The Sufis, as well as other Christians would say, Christians and all the mystics would say, I am God. But that doesn't mean I'm God above all else. It means I am having the experience that I am God, and so are you, and so is everything. That's the mystical experience.
That, like the union of with God, the union with God.
Everything. Right. And you don't have to call the name God. Like I say, God has many names, right? So it has Allah, Jesus, Adonai, Brahma, Jah, Tao. But it's a great spirit, but also beyond names, no name. You want to call it quantum physics, love, your higher self. They're all different names, but we're, talking about it's language. Language is limiting with the mystical experience. And I wish everybody had the mystical experience. And I tell you why. If everyone had it, that experience, that noetic means experiential inner knowing, right?
Right.
There'd be no war. There would be no war.
Yeah.
Because you would know that if I harm you, I'm harming me, that we're all one, we're connected.
There was a great story that Carl Jung wrote about in his autobiography. His father was something to do with religion, but he saw that his father didn't have a personal experience. So Carl Jung had a personal experience when he was 12 years old, but he was never religious. But he just knew there was a God. So when I asked him, "Do you believe in God?" He's like, "I don't believe just for the sake of believing. I know there is a God."
And Carl Jung was a mystic. He was.
He had a spiritual awareness, unlike Freud, though genius he didn't have the
right.
spiritual awareness.
Exactly. And in my book, by the way, I separate, I don't like the word separate, but I delineate, I explain that religion and spirituality are two different things, though, of course, they can overlap. And though every religion was rooted in mysticism, by the way, it started by mysticism, but then what comes in? Dogma. Rules. You're in, you're out, you know. Now that's religion, okay? But spirituality is, there is no divide. There, it's includes all, including indigenous spirituality, of course. And then I talk about the cultural, right? Yeah. Like, for example, there's nowhere in the Quran that says a woman has to wear a hijab, but it's become a religious thing. Why? Because it was cultural, right? It says a woman should be modest. Yeah, and that's how they interpreted the modest by. Exactly. Yeah. So I talk cultural interpretation, right? Yeah. So there's and then there's the personal. I can have 10 Muslims in a room and I ask you, what do you believe? What do you? They're going to give me different answers. 10 Christians give me different answers. So you have to, you know, there's the personal. And there is what's very different now than say 100 years ago, even different now than 50 years ago. Before, if somebody was Christian, Jewish, Muslim, if they questioned, if they didn't believe certain things, they followed anyway for the sake of the community. Yeah. Right? Then your generation and my generation, even some of us in my generation, started saying, well, why do you do that? Do I believe in that? Well, why should I do it if I don't believe in it? You know, like, you know, so there's like started questioning, like, right. Not just doing it for the sake of doing it. Yeah, the conservative brand of religion has diminished because people are, there's a much more freedom, so people are exploring different ways. So that's why people like you come in, where you look at different sides of all religions and try to so okay, let's talk about the so I don't ever, by the way, convert. You don't convert. Never. I don't ever tell somebody you should believe this or you shouldn't believe that. You should be this or you should be that. Or nor do I ever push them in any direction. But this is what I do help them do through meditation, through prayer, and it could be prayer in their own tradition, to get it connected to their own soul so they can speak to the divine and get the answers for themselves. And I'll give you an example. I was working with a Muslim Christian couple, and he was having conflict. You know, grew up very traditional. He was Muslim. Muslim, very traditional, and you know, was really afraid he's going to hell. Right. It took a long time to reconcile that he was even with someone, but because she made it clear she was not going to convert. She was actually more spiritual than religious. So after lots of conversations, I mean, it takes time for someone to trust you. Yeah. And I would say, let's, you know, we start with the first surah of the Quran. I would read Hafez and, you know, things that I knew. We'd always start with prayer. And to make a long story short, after counseling, and then he came to a place where I asked him, do you really believe these things, or is it from fear? You know, is it because it was ingrained in you? What do you really feel? He couldn't even answer. You understand? Is it fear of what your parents, your community, you're going against them? Is that it? Or is it what? So through meditation, I remember he told me he had the first direct experience of the divine without any fear or, you know, dogma And later he said to me, you changed my life. You changed how I see everything. I didn't.
Right. Did he change his religion, or he stayed the same, but
he's staying his religion, but he didn't have the fear anymore. And he's alternate options. He didn't have the fear like, oh my goodness, if he goes to a church, something is like horrible. Right. It's going to happen to him. He loved Islam, but he loved it even more, he told me now, in a much broader way without the fear. It took all the heavy and what he felt was holding him back. And he now, again, how do I deal with it? Isn't it a matter of interpretation? Look, if you look at the Bible, there are a lot of divisive passages in that.
Oh, well, yeah, Quran is the same, right?
In the Quran. But if you want to take it that way, you can take it that way. I say, we have hands, right? We can caress someone or kill them, choke them to death. Yeah. You can do this with anything. And it's the same thing with religion. You want to use it for love or to control and incite hatred. Think about it. You could use anything for positive or negative. So when a couple comes to me and says, for example, I remember he said, if I don't raise my children Muslim, it's haram, And
yeah,
I said,
how do you do that? Like when the couple is different, that's even important. Like marrying is one thing, but then how do you raise the children? Oh my gosh.
In book is bless this child. So I say to them, and then, I say to her, so, and what happens if you don't raise your children Christian? She goes, oh, if they don't get baptized, they go to hell. And I just look at them. I said, who's right? I don't make a declaration of anything. So who's right? And so what I do is first, when they come to me, we talk, and then I give them a questionnaire, a thought-provoking questionnaire that they answer separately. And the first questionnaire asks you, do you believe in God? How do you believe in God? Why do you love you? Like what's sacred to you? And have you had a spirit, religious experience and I go all through these questions. How do you see your future life together? Where do how are you going to raise your children? What are the holidays going to look like? Yeah. What icons are you going to, like really? So then they answer separately. And I tell them then before they come to me the second time, trade the answers, right? Talk about it. And I tell them, try to have courage, be revealing, go to the places that you're afraid to go to. Don't be afraid of the tears. And also they send them to me, the questionnaires, because sometimes I see things they don't see. Positive things too, by the way.
Yeah.
So they send me it. I look and I see some things, and I say whatever issues they had when they talked about it, they bring to me. Then if it progresses, because sometimes people do break up, but a lot of times they don't, then I ask them to go back after the third meeting to make a blueprint. This is our life. This is how our wedding, this is how we're going to raise our children. Now, of course, it's not in blood. It might change, but they have to really give it a lot of thought and, work it out. And it's amazing what happens actually.
So what happened? Okay, so what usually happens with the decision about the kids, the religion?
It depends. I had one couple. I remember they decided that they raised he was the son of a Holocaust survivor. They raised the children Jewish, but she would keep her Christianity and she would participate. But I always, when I counsel that, I say, do a lot of soul searching in advance. Put yourself in the future. How will you feel? Will you feel left out? Will you, they have 2 kids. They're doing fine. So sometimes they choose one religion, right? Other times I've had couples go to a third, like for example, the Unitarian Church is a place that accepts a lot of interfaith couples. Right. So they'll a third avenue, right? Or sometimes if they're Christian and conservative Islam, I tell them, check out the Sufis.
Right.
Like, so I tell them, church, mosque, temple, shop, like go and see where you feel comfortable. I also encourage both of them to understand and learn about each other's traditions, because so much fear is rooted in because we don't know, we don't understand. I had one, she was a doctor, Catholic, very Catholic, marrying a Persian Muslim. He found me online through my book, and she later says he knew that she needed help. She really was torn up inside. She was holding back from even celebrating her own traditions because she felt she had all these conflicts. Yeah. When she came to me, she wasn't very trusting at first. It took time. After the wedding, a couple of things happened. She said that when she started understanding his religion and going in front of, she realized, she said, it didn't seem unfamiliar, like so much, she saw that the themes were the same. And she just said to me that she had so much fear, and that the fear just went away, and that now they're finding their way. And so they're raising their children in both. The children will be baptized and they'll be blessed by an imam.
Okay, so they'll be both. Okay.
Yeah. Some couples choose me to celebrate both in a way. Some go to a Unitarian church, but then, they'll do the Jewish holidays or the Muslim or Christian holidays as well. I had one of my couples told me that it was a 5-year-old was in school and said, what traditions do you celebrate at home? Do you have a Christmas tree, a menorah? Do you celebrate Eid? And this was a Christian Jewish. And she said, both. And I couldn't believe this, but in this day and age, this teacher said, no, that you can't have both. And the mother called and said, no, we do. We do. We have, Christmas tree and a menorah. He's being brought up in both. So the teacher then used it as a teaching tool. And the mother said it was one of the proudest moments to teach this, the class about interfaith, multi-faith families. But where there's love, there's always a way. But I do tell my couples this: if you're going to put your religion first, and we're talking about, remember what we said, dogma, doctrine, community, then you have to marry someone of your own religion.
Right.
But if you put your marriage first, you're going to put your love first, then you can work it out.
Right. Because I imagine if people are really like, this is the only way, then they would marry, they would only marry, like a Christian would just marry a Christian. But even within the Christian faith, there could be a conflict, because a Catholic could marry a Protestant. And then or even a Muslim, a Sunni could be marrying a Shia, and that's
they don't even, right. Absolutely. And it's happened to me, actually. I've had, I remember a couple evangelical Christian and a Catholic said, we need your help. And, it's like, and they're both Christians.
Right. What can you do? Okay, let's talk about Jean Klein, one of your favorite teachers.
Oh, my teacher. Oh,
so I've heard him mentioned before by my teacher, David Hawkins, but I have to admit I don't know much about Jean Klein. So what is his work about?
Klein was a medical doctor and a musicologist. He actually believed that if you played the right note, by the way, very difficult to find the right note. If you had a certain disease and you played the right note over and over and over, you would be able to heal the disease through the vibration. So he had gone to India, a spiritual seeker. And he had this experience, which he describes, where he was one with everything. And he just reached this state of awareness, stopped being a medical doctor, and literally just went around talking. People would ask him a question like a guru, and he would answer. And he never wrote the book himself. They were transcribed, his questions and answer, sort of like in the Yogananda Paramahansa, the Divine Romance is all questions and answers, how he answered. Those were his books, and his books were, I am that I am, all these. So when I read his books back in the 80s, I thought, there's no person here. I've read many books. I always felt a personality, right? I felt no personality, just pure spirit. How could that be? Does this person really exist? Did he really? And knowing that they were transcriptions, how could that be? So that's when I decided I had to do his, meet him, retreats, and his personality came through in person, right. like with his laughter and whatever. And basically he talked, one of the things I love that someone said to him, you always seem so happy and relaxed. I'm always so full of angst. And why is that? He said, because you believe you're a body. I don't.
But how do you?
The person who was dying said to him, can you speak? Will I die? And Jean Klein would always, what I loved is he would do this energy transference. Not everybody felt it. A lot of people did, but you would feel it like a being. He would go into this meditation, and sometimes it seemed to people that he was not giving the answer to their question, but he was giving the answer they needed to hear, or that everybody needed to hear, both. But so he said, will I die? And he would always be quiet for a moment and just beam. There'd be this energy beam. And then he said, if you believe this is who you are, you will die. If you do not believe this is who you are, you will not die. When I asked him, can you speak of art? Because I'm a painter. Well, he'd say, and it's interesting because I had read something that he said that art is conceived in an instant and then brought out to fruition as to the best of the artist's ability. And I knew that sometimes that's true, but sometimes not. Like I felt art's also a process sometimes. Like some of my paintings are 4, 5, 6 paintings till I reach the conclusion. And I remember I said, I was aware enough that you don't argue. Because part of me, instead of saying, I don't agree with you, I just said, can you speak of art? And again, there was a beam of energy and everybody felt it. People came up, said lately, and he said, why do you do art? And I said, because I must. And he said, well, look deeper and you will see it is to make an offering. Then ask yourself, who is offering to whom? And I wept because it's true. If you think you're doing it, you're not the channel. When you're doing art purely, you're a channel, just like anything else in life.
Right.
Who is offering to whom? The universe is offering to itself.
Right. Like a muse. You're not. It's not that you're doing it. It's coming from some other place, and you're just the recipient. You're just downloading it and putting it on the page.
And he was reminding me of that you don't do it. You don't do it. Who is offering to whom? It's the universe offering to itself. And I think about Leonardo da Vinci used to call works of art God's grandchildren.
Because it's through you and I get it. Wow. There was an author that wrote a book about writing, and she said that back in the olden days of Italy, they had that the writer would say that the genius has me, almost like the muse has me. So the muse is writing. It's not my genius, and that kind of kept them humble.
Yeah. When Handel's Messiah. There's a story when Handel did the first Messiah, where I don't remember where he did it. Was it Australia or Germany? When he unveiled, when they played it for the first time, the people were standing, it's majestic, right? People were just, a standing ovation. And he said, "Not me." He kept going, "Not me." He kept pointing out.
It came from the boss upstairs.
Don't applaud me.
Right. So you're a New Yorker. I just want to get to mention this. So you lived in New York City your whole life?
Amazingly. I've traveled the world.
Yeah.
I have. My parents are immigrants from Italy. I have a lot of family in Italy. So as soon as this Corona weighs down, I'm going back to Italy. But I think the reason I've stayed in New York is because it's a mini world.
Yeah.
I grew up here, where in Manhattan, this is a fact, we have more people that English is not their first language than there is. Okay? That's wonderful to me. See, I love that. If you want any food, experience any food, any culture, it's here,
Yeah.
I once asked an Indian man here, "Where's the best Indian food?" I thought he was going to say, this in India or this in London. He said, "In Queens." It's better than India.
Is it because he likes it the way they do it and they're in Queens, or is it because it's more? Can it be more authentic? Is that possible?
I think that I'm sure certain places in Queens is not authentic, but some is very authentic. But maybe also the quality of the ingredients, that could be a possibility.
Right. Yeah, New York. I always loved New York.
I love that. I love that you can. There's the other thing that I love about New York is the talent. You go to a coffee shop, right? And this guy's getting his, PhD in music. This one's an actor. That's been, this one, the talent and the variety of talent. I used to live by Central Park, and in that group, so dogs were allowed to go off leash before 9 and after 9. So in the morning, right, and there'd be like this famous opera singer next. Oh, this is the other thing. By diversity, I also mean like the guy who delivers furniture with the famous opera singer. We all be at a party together, right? With a doctor, with a minister, with I'm talking diversity on every level, and skin color and language. And I love it, including, I love that, I had the building across the street. Hugh Jackman has an apartment, and his wife, and Calvin Klein. And then right down the same street. Okay. So in this building, I could never afford to. I mean, they're just like, they're all, forget the amounts, luxury beyond luxury.
Right.
And then on my block, the same block, right? So here we have some of the most wealthiest people in the world. And on my block here, subsidized housing.
Right.
People who get subsidized by the government. I love that.
And probably always rent controlled, or not? Yeah. Not for the luxury ones, no. Though they're exempted.
Luxury, right? They've never learned rent control. They're paying in the stratosphere, and then these people get subsidized. Like the government actually supports some of the.
Right.
Like otherwise you live in a bubble. I just can't imagine living in a bubble.
Yeah. So do you also do? You said to me you do funerals as well.
In fact, I just gave a class at All Faith Seminary International on funerals and memorial services and life celebrations. Yeah. Different kinds. And for people who are religious, who are spiritual and not religious, and even people who are humanist, which is, could be atheist or agnostic, but everybody wants something to feel spiritual, to feel heartfelt, how to make that really special. And I've had some, I always say sometimes, does God send me the tough ones? I mean, I've got a phone call, my friend was murdered. I thought, we need healing. Can you do that service? My daughter killed herself. This person's dying with small children. Now, so someone said, how do you do that? First of all, it's the most profound service you can do. You have an opportunity to help. You can't take away the grief, but you can help start a process of healing and put it in some sort of context, bring some sort of comfort to celebrate that life. But it's also a gift to me because I come home and I am acutely aware that every moment is a gift. Life is a gift, no matter what your situation is, even during Corona or whatever. This moment you have to be alive, and if you are with people you love, is a gift. So I come home and I kiss my husband and my son and and I think, and it reminds me again and again. And one year I sent a New Year's message out, and I don't remember why I did it one year, and maybe it was a Christmas message. I don't remember what it was, but I remember I said, do this right now. Take the person you love right now, that you live with, your husband, your wife, your child, and close your eyes and imagine that person's gone. Do it. Gone. The person you love, gone. The person you care about most in the world is gone. And some people will say, well, I can't imagine that. No, try. Try that you will never see that person again. And how you left it is how you left it. That's it. You will never see that person again. So take that person before you. Now open your eyes, and they're there again. Right. So if you really go deep into this experience,
right,
how would you treat them now? How would you treat them? Would the petty things bother you so much?
No. Imagine if you do that every day. Oh, I imagine
That's what I said.
In the morning, I imagine they're dead. They're still alive. I'm so grateful. That is a really good exercise. So, okay, I wanted to ask you this as well. I think we talked off air about this just a little bit. But obviously, you deal with when people are in the process of getting married, but so do you sometimes see couples that for some reason or another you can tell that they've been put together by someone, or somebody likes another, like one likes the other, but she doesn't like him back, or vice versa? Like, in other words, how do you know if you met the person that's the one? I know it's a cliche. I guess there's an element of choice. I get it, but how do you know that?
People ask me all the time, Reverend, how do you know? You seem to know everything about love, which I don't, but I am married 34 years, so to the love of my life, but how do you know? And I always answer, if you are asking, you don't know. When you meet that person, you will know. And we talked about this. I said, if you've never had chocolate, can someone really describe what chocolate tastes like to you?
No, they can't.
No. You could say it's creamy, it's delicious, but it's sweet.
It's chocolatey, but then
eat it, and then and it's the same thing when you find my husband. I'll never forget when we just met. 5 minutes later, I remember him standing like this, and believe me, my husband's beautiful, but I wasn't really attracted to him at the time, like physically. It wasn't like this major attraction. We were talking 5 minutes, and I felt him like stand back, and he looked at me deep into my eyes, and he said, I don't know what's going to happen after tonight, but I know I want you in my life. And I said, okay. And I kept talking, we're at a party. And he stopped me. And he made me really look at him. He had these intense eyes. And he said, I mean it. I don't know what's going to happen, but I know I want you in my life. And he said he knew right then and there.
Wow.
That's a spiritual connection. Now, when did I know? I didn't know right away. I knew when I put my head on his heart, on his chest. To this day, it's my spot. We're together 36, married 34. I still call it home. Like it felt like home. Like I'm home. I'm home. Even though he didn't outwardly have what I thought was I was going to marry, I'm home. This is home.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. That's amazing.
So yeah, people talk about, I mean, it is cliche, but I can tell people talk about it feeling like home. Someone said, you don't feel like you could tap dance. You could just be yourself with this person. You know what I mean? Totally. You know, you don't feel like you have to be on guard if you got to put on a pretense. It is, you know, there's a quote in the Bible that says there are three things too difficult for me to understand: the bird and the wind, you know, and it says, and what happens between a man and a woman. There's a great mystery in this. And there is true, you know. I do think falling in love is mystical, can be.
Do you remember right now which verse in the Bible? So
No,
look it up.
It's very rare.
Okay.
And some people say it alludes to sex, possible.
Okay.
I like to think it might, because it's like the man and a maiden. Again, I interpret it man and woman.
Right.
But I will send it to you though.
Okay.
I have it written.
I'll put it in the description so people can. And
also what's interesting is in certain interpretations, it just stands there like between a man and a woman. And then there's another one, the Catholics inject, there's a great mystery hidden here, which I love. And there is. Joseph Campbell had that experience with his wife. He met, she was, I think, a ballet dancer. He took her class. She was a professor, and he knew that was it. And he got married late in life. And Bill Moyers, in interviewing him, said, because Bill Moyers had that experience also with his wife. He just knew, right? He said, Joe, how do you explain that? Like, I had that with my wife. You had that with your wife. And he said, I know, it's almost as if your future life comes out and calls you. He said, but we're talking about, you know, mystical things here. There's something, you know, mystical here. And that is true. That's a mystical experience.
Since you mentioned Joseph, another Joseph that comes to mind is Joseph Smith. Now, I don't know if this is I do love Mormons, but some of my Christian friends would they're like, no. But yeah, they're probably more conservative than the rest, maybe. That's my impression. So that's something you probably don't specialize in.
I have worked with Mormons marrying Catholic, Mormons marrying Protestants. I haven't worked with Mormons marrying other religions, to tell you the truth. But Mormons marrying, and issues come up for sure. Again, it depends where they are in their spiritual journey. Yeah. I know one couple who broke up for 4 years because he was actually raised Protestant, but agnostic, and was not going to convert to Mormonism, would not want his children completely Mormon. And she was miserable for 4 years. It's realized that she couldn't live without him, so they worked it out.
Wow, this is such a huge thing. It's such a huge thing.
And then I had another couple. He was Mormon. He really believed in certain teachings. He told me specifically the things he really loved about Mormonism, but there were many things he didn't believe, sort of like me with Catholicism, you know. So he started opening up, you know, to other. So it's where you are at your spiritual journey, you know.
Do you do also baptisms?
Yes. I was raised Christian, so I don't, you know, I don't. It's interesting. So I've done traditional baptisms, you know, in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Mm-hmm. And I've done, when it's interfaith, so Christian, Jewish, Muslim, Christian, where, believe it or not, one time we did do Christian baptism. It gets it's not easy. There's a lot of talking, a lot of planning and plotting with the family, but I offer other baptisms also, a universal baptism. I baptize you as a child of God, as a child of light, and a child of humanity. I just do a blessing of water, God bless you. And I explain how water often is used in many religious traditions because of its pure character, in the mikvah, for example, in Jewish, in Hinduism, you wash the hands, and in Islam, you wash. So it often is a symbol of divine spirit. Also, we come from water, right? All life comes from water, and we come from the water of our mother's womb. So that it's appropriate to use water to welcome this child into us. So I have different, and I even have a Celtic version. I once had these two, both Catholic, come to me, and they told me they're Wiccan, Celtic tradition. And I said, well, why are you coming to me? There are Wiccan priests and priestesses. And she said, our Catholic family, they'll faint. So I said, oh,
wait.
I get it.
They were Catholic, but they were Wiccan at the same time? That's confusing.
They weren't Catholic. They were raised very traditionally Catholic.
Right.
Became Wiccan. The baby's born.
Oh my
and
gosh.
They want to have a service, something for the family, but they don't want it Catholic. So I said, I get it. You want me to do sort of a Celtic ceremony, but that won't offend your Catholic family. I said, I can do that. So we had it in their backyard. We had a bowl of water. And, in Wiccan, they do all the elements, right? So I had earth and fire, and then I ended with water. But I also made it very personal. That's another thing. We'll talk about that. I bring the personal into it. And grandma came up to me, Catholic grandma, and said, they should all be like this.
Well,
so success.
Yeah, they don't care. After they don't care anymore, they're like,
No, because she loved it. I actually wanted to experience it. Like when I did the Pashtun Muslim marrying the Anglican British guy, there was tension like you can't imagine. I won't even go into it. Tears and tension and
what was it? Muslim and what?
And Anglican British.
Oh, okay.
And he said, look, I don't care. We can have a whole Muslim ceremony, but I want to do Christian vows. But that wasn't. So I wrote this based on the Quran, Islamic, but Christian, vows. But it's not really Christian. It's just, in that kind of culture, whatever. And I really, my Arabic's terrible. So I thought that the father could hold the Holy Quran with the brother and do the nikah. And I had to send him the ceremony. He approved it. Then he wasn't going to come. Then he was going to come. And then 2 days before the ceremony, I said to the bride, is he going to hold, are we doing the nikah? He's going to do it. Because we haven't, you talk to him. So he ended up agreeing to do it. And I remember at the end of the ceremony, honestly, I thought to myself, I remember telling my husband, I give myself a B+. I don't know who else could have done it better. There was so much tension. But I found out later, they came to me and said that the family was thrilled. And the father said to me, but Susanna, when did you become Muslim?
But apparently to join the Muslim faith, all you need to do is say a sentence or two. Isn't that right?
Right. Well, what I always say to people, I tell them, first of all, I said to them, don't hold it against me, but I am Sufi. By the way, that doesn't make me not anything else. But I didn't tell him that. I just said I'm Sufi. He goes, oh, I don't know much about them, but they're Muslims, aren't they? But what I tell my Islamic friends is I can absolutely say there's no God but God. I have no problem saying that. I can say Prophet Muhammad is his prophet, but I think I couldn't say he's the last prophet. That would be, I couldn't say that, but I can say that. I tithe, I pray 5 times a day, not like the Muslims pay, even though sometimes I do Arabic prayers, but I pray when I wake up in the morning. I give thanks for this day. I pray before every meal and I pray at night, giving thanks for all the blessing. So I pray 5 times a day. And I said, I can't do Hajj because I'm not allowed to do Hajj.
Well, what is Hajj?
Hajj is the once in a lifetime mandatory, if you can afford it and you're above health, to go and circumvent, the Kaaba.
Oh, and not in Mecca, what's the other city?
Yeah.
Is it Mecca?
Mecca, yeah.
Okay, right.
Which is very powerful. If you ever watched it online, it's incredible. Hundreds of thousands of people it's like a vortex. It's like it really is incredible to watch.
So if people want to contact you, so you're available for, let's recap this. So weddings, interfaith weddings, blessings, blessings for children.
For children.
And
funeral. Oh, by the way, I've done funerals for Hindu, Muslim, Jewish, mostly Christian or humanist too. But why would they come to me? I'll give you an example. A 92-year-old Muslim woman, Albanian, lovely, lovely woman. I had done a couple of the grandchildren mixed. So she raised her 5 children Muslim. She was Muslim. She didn't wear hijab, but her sisters wore hijab. But she was very open-minded. So when she died, she wanted to be washed and wrapped in white. And certain prayers said, the Muslim tradition, but she wanted to be cremated, which is haram.
Oh.
In Islam. So no imam would do her service. So the grandson said, let's call Susanna. So when I did the service, I said, I will do Muslim prayers. We will do some. But I said, since the grandchildren, they're Christian and Jewish here, why don't we do a little bit of other too? Because you're the ones grieving too. So we did a little bit focused on Islam, but we did a little bit of the others too.
Wait, so this is New York. So this is a Muslim Albanian grandmother, and she had Jewish grandkids.
Right. So she had 5
wow.
Muslim children, and the grandchildren married Christian and Jewish. So they were.
Wow.
And then another one I did was he was Hindu. He married a Spanish Catholic, and when his father died, there was a big fight. His mother had died, so the father remarried, and they didn't get along, right?
Yeah.
2 Hindus, and the mother didn't want to do anything. I mean, it was just they had a very difficult marriage. So the son wanted to do something to honor the father, so he said, "I'm going to do my own thing." He got part of the ashes, and he called me. And so mostly everything in prayer and how I talked was about Hinduism, but he also chose meditation that I developed that's universal and some other readings, but there were, it was Hindu focused for sure.
Yeah. Well,
also do counseling for couples while they're dating. They sometimes come to me because they're getting serious. Like one Muslim man said he saw his girlfriend do this, and he was like, "Oh my goodness," and getting serious, and they started coming for counseling. I'm not kidding. He saw her do this, and I remember I said to him, "Did you find it offensive?" He said, "No, actually, I did think it was beautiful, but still,
that was it for him. She did a cross, and
that was it. And he was like, "Oh my goodness!" So they came to me. So sometimes they come to me while they're dating. Sometimes when I had one couple come to me. I said, "Oh my goodness!" They were planning a wedding just a few months away, and they were fighting. So I said, "You should have come to me," but they didn't know about me. A year ago, 2 years ago, and so we had to have intense. And then sometimes they come to me after. Say I didn't do their wedding, they're having children. Like there was one Jewish lawyer, I'll never forget this. He promised, I didn't do their wedding, they didn't know me. He promised her family that the kids would be raised Christian. But when he had the child, when she was pregnant, he couldn't do it. So they needed help. So they came to me. but other things, so I get to know them. I found out where she was very religious, she wasn't so much anymore, but her parents didn't know that.
Right.
So what would happen is they would blame him. So the other thing I help is help them how to talk to their parents.
But if the woman wasn't Jewish, then technically they're not.
Right.
In the strictest interpretation of Judaism, which I'm familiar with, you're Jewish
right.
to your mother. If the mother is Jewish, you're Jewish.
By the mother, it's matriarchal.
Right,
Whereas
right.
Or it's from the father.
Yeah.
But yes, it's interesting because there have been people come up to me and that's their great concern. Like, even if the wife will say, okay, you can raise them Jewish, but she's not Jewish. So are they Jewish? There's all that. And
right. I spent some time in Israel. I spent 3 months a few years ago, and I went to a city called Tzfat, which is where Kabbalah originates from. And it's amazing.
That why you?
Sorry.
Did you go there to study Kabbalah? Was that the purpose?
No. It was. I was near. I was in Tiberias, which is near the Sea of Galilee. But we went for because Tzfat is very close, so we took a bus. I was there for a day, and it felt like Tiberias had a special feeling for sure, but Tzfat was something else.
Really?
Yeah, I really I felt it. I don't know what it was, but it was really peaceful town. Like it looked kind of touristy, like obviously, but it was something different about that town for sure.
That's what you're bringing up. There are places on earth. I mean, you can have the mystical experience there anywhere. Let's you have it sitting on your couch, okay? But there are places on earth that have a higher spiritual frequency. That does not guarantee you're going to have a mystical experience, but you felt it there.
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of people go there for that. It sounds like a place I want to go. And I've been to these. I've been to Machu Picchu. I definitely felt it there. There are certain sites I went to. It wasn't the first time I went to Greece, but when COVID happened, I had this call to go to Delphi, and I had a mystical experience in Delphi. But I'll give you an experience where I thought I would, and it didn't happen. Joseph Campbell said he was raised Catholic, but didn't really consider himself Catholic. But if he had to pick his church, his parish, and he wrote about it, and he lived there for 4.5 months, experiencing the Cathedral of Chartres in France. And Chartres, they used to do in the Middle Ages a pilgrimage, from, I forgot what the cathedral is in Spain, all the way to France. Unfortunately, in those days, flagellating themselves and on their knees. And so he said that because Joseph Campbell was, one of my teachers, I turned around, I said, I'm going to Chartres, right? And I don't think I was married yet maybe yes, I was just married to my husband. And he goes, what? And at those days, I used to go to Paris for work. So it wasn't hard. Chartres is I think an hour and 10 minutes away by train. I said, I'm just going to add up days and I'm going to go to Chartres. He goes, okay, I'll come with you. And I had an artist couple who lived above me. And she was an artist. She was Jewish. And when I told her I was going to Chartres, she goes, do you know anything about that cathedral? I said, no, just that Joseph Campbell said it's, mystical and it's good. And she said, it's mathematically perfect. Remember, she's Jewish, she's an Orthodox, she's atheist. It is mathematically perfect. And then she started describing the numbers to me and the perfection and the way the light comes in. And I was like, oh my goodness, I'm going to have this incredible experience. We get to Chartres. As I get there, the big doors, I'm so excited in the morning. I stay in a little bed and breakfast across the street. There's blood on the door. Some pilgrim cut themselves, put blood on the door.
Oh my gosh.
The Catholic school and girl in me, a wall went up. That was it. I walked inside, there's blood on the labyrinth.
Oh my gosh. Inside there's a labyrinth, right? Inside.
Yeah, there's a labyrinth. And that was my plan, to walk the labyrinth. And honestly, I remember I looked at that was it. Judgment came in, fear came in, and I didn't have any mystical experience. But interesting enough, in the middle of the night, that night, 3 a.m, my husband is not in bed. And where can he go in this little town? Everything is closed. Where could he be? Now I'm worried. I'm waiting. He gets up, comes back, door opens. I said, where were you? He said, I was with the cathedral. Now, remember, he wasn't raised Catholic.
Right.
And he said, I've never been so blown away by a building in my life. He had a mystical experience.
Right.
He had it. So
my grandmother was checking on something again.
Yeah, it's okay. But anyway, so you felt it when you're open to feeling it.
Yeah.
But what I expected to feel it, but I saw that blood, judgment came in, and my whole background, my whole, Catholic stuff background got in the way. My husband had none of that.
Yeah.
And he felt.
Yeah, you have to be, you cannot force a experience. But sometimes with the expectations, I remember when I saw, did you ever see the Buddha relics? There used to be a tour of Buddha relics that went around the world. And supposedly it was the relics of when Buddha died, they cremated his body, and they found little pearls inside the ashes,
Right.
and they contained his energy. So the relics were Buddha, his disciples, and some of the other Buddhists throughout the centuries, and they had the tremendous energy, and they were touring for about 10 years or so. They stopped about 5 years ago, but it was amazing.
Wow.
But I expected it, though. I thought I was gonna feel something. I expected it, but then I came there and was like, I was still blown away. I was like, wow.
But you probably had no judgment about it.
No, I had no judgment. Yeah.
It wasn't my expectation that I think stopped me from feeling it in Chartres. It wasn't that. It was my judgment,
right,
which is rooted in fear.
Yeah.
I'll give you another example. When you talk about bones, I've been in many churches. Catholics are big on taking the saints' bones, right? And I've never had a mystical experience with any of the bones. Okay, my friend who's Jewish, raised Jewish, calls herself a Boo Jew. Is very much. She actually followed the Dalai Lama around and whatever. She went to a church. She said she absolutely experienced what you experienced, that she felt the energy of the bone. She felt the mystical experience of the bone. See, because she has no judgment,
right?
Open to it. So for me, it was the judgment. I saw the blood and it repulsed me. And that was that.
Right.
My husband saw the blood and went,
there you go. That's why he's your husband, because you're not totally the same. You react differently. There you go. Well, it's been a pleasure having you on the podcast. I think everybody's learned a lot. And do you do now in the Zoom time, in the COVID time, do you also do distance marrying people?
All over the world. I
go.
actually did even before. Because, for example, there are couples who read my book from Australia or, like whatever. And I'm like, it used to be Skype. I used to do Skype, and now it's Zoom. But I have everything. I tell people I have Skype, Zoom, FaceTime, Google Duo, WhatsApp, you name it, Viber.
There we go. So if you want to get married or get some counseling or something, Susanna is the person for you.
And I've done ceremonies internationally. I think I told you I did a Jain Indian Greek Orthodox in Greece. I've done, they wanted to have, but neither would do it. And they wanted to keep their traditions.
Yeah.
It was, and I did one in Mexico. They were both Catholic, but they're not religious at all. They're agnostic, but they were the first family to not be married in a church.
Right.
And it was in front of a cenote, so they wanted it special. Read my book, asked me to come down, and actually in that tradition, because they were so drawn to cenotes, so I'm always learning, right? Cenotes were very sacred to the Mayans, so we incorporated a little bit Mayan tradition.
Oh, there you go. So a lot of everything. So thank you very much for being on the podcast. And for everybody watching, listening, thank you for watching.
Thank you. Thank you. It was an honor, a joy. And I bless you. God bless you in sharing spiritual and mystical wisdom with the world.
Thank you.